Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Planning, Building, and Zoning Committee for the Village of Hoffman Estates on this June 8th, 2020. May we have a roll call, please?
Chairman Stanton.
I'm President Sweating.
Vice Chairman Arnett.
Present.
Trustee Mills.
Present.
Trustee Newell.
Present.
Trustee Palafis.
Present.
Trustee Gata.
Present.
Mayor McLeod.
Present.
Looking for approval of the minutes of May 11th, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Anybody notice any corrections or deletions that need to be made in those minutes? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Now I'm looking for approval of the minutes of June 1st, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Anybody notice any corrections or deletions that need to be made in those minutes? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. New business, we have one item, but we have three in those sections of that one item. Request approval of the following: accept the Village Green Concept Master Plan as recommended by the Village Green Ad Hoc Committee. B, site plan approval for the Phase 1 construction scope for the Village Green, including mass grading and utilities. C, request authorization to approve addendum number 1 to the Village Green Master Plan, contract with Tria Architecture of Burr Ridge, Illinois, in an amount not to exceed $172,500.
So moved.
I'll second.
Peter?
Sure, I can just set the stage briefly for this. As you all know, obviously, the ad hoc committee has been talking about the master plan for the Village Green at their meetings, and earlier this year, they held a meeting after retaining Tria Architects to perform the work along with their sub-consultants. They reviewed some options to the plan that were presented and made some decisions about what to recommend as a single concept master plan for the Village Green. It includes, obviously, the basic same structural layout of the green that there is today, with many enhancements, retaining the current main stage location, but reworking the hill, making enhancements to the concession building, the beer garden area, adding some other amenities to the site. Close attention was paid to the pedestrian network into and through the site and how that connects to potential parking areas, including a more pronounced physical visual entryway at Prairie Stone Parkway. And then conceptually, there is still some potential for adding parking in the right-of-way of Prairie Stone Parkway. But in the interim, obviously, the Sears Center West lot is still available for parking. So the plan in front of you, and I won't go into too much more detail because the consultant will walk through that for you. Why you have three items in front of you, the first is really for the PB&Z committee to accept, or not, but at least consider acceptance of the master plan as voted on by the Village Green Ad Hoc Committee. And then at that discussion, we really took the item one step further and talked about the potential for starting the next phase of construction. So there's actually a formal site plan approval requested for the Phase 1 construction plan on the scope of services, which again can be explained in the presentation. With the cancellation of some events this summer and not really knowing where things were going, it was thought that this is a good opportunity, if possible, to kind of springboard into construction this year. If that can happen, and a lot of the mass grading and utility work can start in the fall, then potentially the green could be have turf reestablished and be open and available again for use in the summer of 2021. So that was the thought process there. There are funds available in the Prairie Stone Capital Fund, which is not the general fund. These have been available for years and are used to pay for the study. And there are also funds available to basically cover the Phase 1 construction project that's been proposed. So there is a funding source already designated for this, which is why it was felt we could move forward. And then the third item actually implements that step, would be to authorize an actual addendum to the master plan contract with Tria and their sub-consultants to actually develop the final engineering plans needed and hired the construction company to actually do the work with a goal of starting again late summer of 2020 if possible. That process does involve some plan development as well as going through an MWRD stormwater process. So it will take a little bit of time if it's authorized. So I kind of wanted to set that stage and then let Ron from Tria Architects walk you through a presentation that actually shows you the plan and gets into some of the details, the timing, the costs, and then he can answer questions on that. And then Ryan Johnson of our staff actually worked hard with legal on the contract, which we can answer questions on that also at the end. But it's probably best to start with the plan overview and presentation so you kind of have a better idea what you're looking at. So Ron, if you want to.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Ron McGrath. I'm from Tria Architecture. So I worked with, as the architect, we worked with JSD Landscape Architects and HR Green Civil Engineers on the master plan for the Village Green.
Do you want to give us your address as well?
Almost gave you my home address. I didn't really give it there. We're at 901 McClintock Drive in Burr Ridge, Illinois.
Thank you.
All right. I actually haven't been there very often enough lately. I had to think about it for a second. All right, so I'm going to just quickly give you a walkthrough of the master plan as we designed it. You're all obviously very familiar with the Village Green as it sits today. So the way that we had several meetings with the village, with the committees and the department in order to understand what your needs were and what the long-range goal was for the Village Green in itself. So we've taken a lot of that into account and working within somewhat of the layout that you have, but enhancing it, making it better, adding more amenities, enlarging certain areas, reworking certain areas in order to make the Village Green really something spectacular. So one of the first things that we did is, if you're familiar currently, on one side, if you can see the cursor on the screen, the viewing hill is here. There's also another existing hill on this side of the green. This hill doesn't really do you a whole lot of good, so one of the first things that we talked about was leveling this area to make it more of a flat space that you can use for multiple different park district or different events, or it would be a more flexible space, and then taking that earth in order to enlarge the viewing hill here where it does the most good. So in this option, what we did in the final master plan is we actually took the stage. We're going to build a new stage. We're going to open up the amphitheater terrace seating in the front, take out the walls on either side, enlarge that, and make that a more inviting space. We rotated the stage just slightly so that we could then elongate the viewing hill and make it larger in order to get more space for more occupants, more people to be able to sit in the viewing hill for concerts and events. The stage itself will be a roof-covered structure flanked on either side by buildings or by structures, one side being a green room for the entertainment, the other side being an electrical room for sound equipment, things like that, things that you're lacking currently.
Do you have any pictures of that at all?
We didn't actually get to a design of the stage and the stage building. That wasn't part of the master plan, if you will.
Okay.
But the back of the stage building would be open, so that there would still be views from the viewing hill, from the amphitheater seating, the terrace seating, through the stage back to the pond behind it. So it still keeps that very open look that you have currently. It just frames it with structures that you need in order to enhance the kind of acts that you have, that you get, as well as provide the infrastructure that the stage building currently lacks.
I have a question for you regarding that, though.
Sure.
Wouldn't the sound dissipate out the back rather than just going to the front?
It
No.
does. It becomes a different kind of acoustical setup. Most of the sound, especially with the viewing hill, is going to have to be done with sound equipment in order to really project that far in a way that's pleasing and not too loud for the people who are up close. And part of the master plan, and we'll get into the phase one, part of it is that when we get into the phase where we're doing the amphitheater, we will then have an acoustical consultant that will do an acoustic design, will design the sound system, that'll then provide infill speakers on the hill itself so that we can then cover more area with music at a volume that's pleasing to everybody, so that we're not blowing the ears off the people who are close to the stage just so the people at the top of the hill can hear. but we're also not making it so quiet that the people at the top of the hill don't even know there's a concert going on. So we want to balance that volume out from front to back. Usually we'll want to have some sort of level, so it's not quite as loud at the back as it is at the front, but you want to balance that out from across the whole green.
Okay.
All right, so going back, so then we've connected, we've created a new entrance off of Prairie Stone Parkway. So part of the master plan was to create a parking area so we could get people off parking on Prairie Stone Parkway itself. So within the island itself, we created if you've ever been to Berwyn, is a good example of it, where there's sort of a little driveway off of the main street that allows you to come in, park, be able to back up, and then pull out without having to back up on the Prairie Stone Parkway. So it's putting a parking area in the island that's out there without requiring somebody to back up on the Prairie Stone Parkway and create a safer way to have people park out there.
I've been to Berwyn, and it's kind of dangerous when you go through Cermak Road like that.
It can be, Cermak's a little bit bigger, I think a little busier than Prairie Stone Parkway gets, although I'm sure at concert times it's a little crazy, but hopefully people aren't moving quite as fast as they do on Cermak. Some people tend to drive a little crazy over there. But going back to the plan, so then we have our pedestrian entrance, crosswalk coming across Prairie Stone into a small little node here of gathering node where all the sidewalks converge on the outside, with then a gateway, some sort of an arch, which we haven't designed yet, but that'll be part of phase one, would be to create this sort of gateway entrance space with then a central spine walkway that goes from Prairie Stone Parkway all the way back to where the concession area is, and allows people to come in and they can either filter into the viewing hill from the side, or they can come around to the front and work their way back up, or they make their way down to the amphitheater, or even to the beer garden. So at where the sidewalks meet, where the concession area meets the spine sidewalk and then the sidewalk that goes to the amphitheater, we've created this gathering node space here where there would be seating. So people could gather here, they could sit here for the concessions, they could sit here during concerts. Becomes kind of a gathering point with a trellis structure, some sort of trellis structure over top of it to provide some shading and some sort of sense of place, of space. Give it a location other than just concrete on the ground, something three-dimensional. So then as we work our way over, we'll start with the right side of the plan. So the concession stand itself, we have an extension or an addition onto the concession area in order to enlarge that building, because we've talked about with the people who run the concession building that they need space for more windows, especially if we're going to be increasing the occupancy of the amphitheater itself. They definitely need space for more windows and more storage in order to be able to serve the number of people who would be coming to the amphitheater in a reasonably timely way. We've also then created a larger concrete plaza along the concession area, so there's more kind of outdoor tables, outdoor seating space. Part of the way that we enlarged the concession building, not only would we add it onto it, but we've removed the bathrooms from that building and created a separate bathroom building, which not only gives us the ability to extend the concession building, but also gives us the ability to add a lot more bathrooms. Your number of bathrooms for the number of people you have is, let's say, not even close at this point. And
It's pathetic, you're right.
And I know that's a problem with lines and waiting and things like that. So we've increased the bathrooms drastically in order to accommodate far more people. So then moving back, so then adjacent to the concession plaza here, we've created another paved or concrete area here that's the sort of a multi-use space. So in the summer, there's bubblers that create not quite a splash pad, but an interactive play area with water bubbling out of the ground for kids to be able to play. When there's concerts or larger events, the bubblers could be turned off and tables could be put out here, so it could become an additional seating space for concessions. And in the winter, we're looking at it's a portable ice rink. It's not actual ice, it's a plastic synthetic surface that creates an ice rink. It's a small rink, but it would create a small skating area. So it would give the park sort of another winter activity built into it, without having to cost an arm and a leg for all the things that go with a true ice arena.
When you say it's plastic, can someone with actual ice skates skate on that?
Yes. They use it, they have one in New Lenox that they use annually. There's other communities, I'm not sure off the top of my head which other ones have them, but I know New Lenox has one.
And what kind of lifespan would that have?
I would have to get back to you on that.
Okay.
That's a JSD question, and we didn't want to bring everybody tonight because of the world we live in today. Didn't want to bring the whole team. And she may text me. I told her if there's anything, if she hears, if she's on the online, so if she hears anything, she'll text me and let me know. So if she does if she texts me during the meeting, I'll let you know what she says.
All right.
But they're designed for exactly that, for use during the winter, for ice. I mean, they're designed as an ice rink. They're designed for municipal use, so it's not a backyard thing. So it's definitely of commercial construction grade. So then with that, we also created a sort of a covered area here next to that plaza space, so that you could have tables under roof. So if there was some inclement weather, you do have some space where people could go. Some people could go to get out of a little bit of rain, but more like that if there's kids playing in the bubblers, that parents could sit in the shade and watch their kids. If kids are ice skating, parents could sit here, and we could put infrared heaters in the roof so that, keep doing that, oops, pardon me, so that there could be a somewhat warmer area for parents to sit. So it gives us a lot of flexibility in ways that we can use this space. And it also could be a place where people could sit if you did have activities, park district activities, or anything else going on in the flat area of the Village Green. Moving a little bit farther over, we have this vending truck or vendors area. So whether it be food trucks or farmers market type scenarios or vendors of any kind, a place where they could come in, they could drive in and park and be able to be easily become part of the whole event, so that you could use this space for multiple different ways and give you more flexibility within the space itself. Off to the side, you'll see a couple spots right here and another one on the other side. These are little outdoor meeting spaces. So knowing that the Village Green is surrounded by corporate buildings, that it invites the corporate buildings to use the Village Green and gives them a way to use it during business hours that is beneficial to them, but also could be a space where people could sit after hours in the evenings, could possibly be used that way too. So it's another flexible covered space, and if I go right here, you can see this is an example of a type of what they look like. So they're a pre-manufactured system that exists. They're very elegant looking, and they provide shade, they provide a little bit of privacy, and the ability for people to sit and to meet and to use the park in a business format as well. So moving around to the beer garden. So this is currently the location of your beer garden. We're proposing to extend the beer garden, make it larger. You still have your small stage back here for small events within the beer garden itself. We have the bags courts. We have a built-in fire pit, so that I think right now there's just sort of a store-bought portable pit that's out there. I think we build one in so that we know it's safer and we don't have to worry about somebody getting hurt on it or something like that. I think that adds some more character to it, as well as it be something built in and nice and part of the beer garden. As we work over them, we've also extended a seating areas with a seating wall and a paved area along the tree line here, so that it sort of starts to extend the beer garden and the amphitheater and starts merging the two together, so that somebody could actually be still sitting within the beer garden space, but still have access to the stage, to the amphitheater, and be able to see what's going on in the events. So as we continue moving left, so we've added a connection of a sidewalk from the west, from the parking lot on the west, so that we could come in this way. There's then the walkway has been widened so that bands could be able to drive back to behind the stage, with a couple parking spaces for the bands to be able to park next to the stage. We've also then added a connecting sidewalk that comes from that parking lot to the west that goes straight to the viewing hill. So that allows people, and I know there's some question about whether or not parking is going to be allowed over there in the future or not, but it does allow more connections to the viewing hill from more parts of the park. So think I've covered everything on the plan. I don't think I'm missing anything. All right. So from an imagery standpoint, so these are just some images of types of things that we're looking at for the park. We talked about the outdoor meeting spaces, the pavilion, the covered pavilion at the interactive play space, some different types of, tables and seating, and, this is an example of the interactive water play where the kids are playing here. So it's a low-lying bubblers, nice fun for summer, but not if we did a larger water park type splash pad. It doesn't lend itself to being able to be turned off and used for other things. It becomes a very one-dimensional use. So we wanted to make sure, especially with it being so close to concessions, that it had multiple uses throughout the seasons for you.
That is the same space that has the ice rink in the winter, is that
Yes,
right? Okay.
correct. So, and this is just some other options of different ways of doing seating, different types of seating. So we'll have some loose seating, Adirondack chairs in some spaces, tables with umbrellas in other spaces, maybe some, like the concession area, maybe some bar top table-like tables. So there's a variety of different types of seating, of different types of tables, really giving you a lot of giving patrons of the park a lot of different options in terms of where they could be, where they could sit, where they could eat, where they can enjoy the music, trying to open it up to give people flexibility. Yes, ma'am.
I have one question, is it okay?
Sure.
Sorry.
Are you finished with your presentation?
Other of the plan, yes.
Okay, go ahead, trustee
Well,
Noel.
I was just in reference, because he was showing that thing about the chairs and the gas thing there. Now, is that gas logs, and that will be shut down at night, or is that actually? Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. Okay, you were showing the picture of by the gas Adirondack chairs. Now, is that like what we're going to have, where it shuts down at night? It's not like a fire pit, what we know out back, you take, and you
We haven't
use
got to that
logs?
level of detail with the committee yet in terms of, because that's not, at this point, it's the concept of a fire pit. When we get into individual phases, then we'll get into more details of whether it's a wood-burning fire pit or a gas fire pit, size, shape, big actual finished material, things
Okay.
like that. We'll get into those details in individual phases. So, and that's one of the things I wanted to point out, is that with the plan, as we go phase by phase, we will delve into the details, like I said, with the acoustical system for the amphitheater. When we get to the phase that's doing the concession building, we will meet with the people running the concessions and really get into sizes of windows and storage and space they need, so we can lay that out in more detail. At this point, we're looking at it as a master plan, as a big picture to understand this is what we want to do, so we can do the earlier phases and know what the next phases entail, so we know what we have to do, so we don't go back and have to undo something that we've already had you do.
Trustee Mills.
Well, overall, the plan's gorgeous. I mean, you've put a lot of time and effort into it. My only concern is, what are we approving for tonight, though? I mean, and the rest of it, is it dependent on,
Sure.
can we stop at any point along the way because we don't have the money for it?
Right. I probably wasn't clear enough in my introduction. I apologize for that. So what Ron has walked through so far is it's a concept master plan. So the idea of a fire pit, the idea of these meeting spaces, the play areas, those are conceptually the layout, how it's going to be oriented. That's really what the concept plan is. It's just the ideas. So that plan, it's felt, obviously, before delving into building stuff, and building one thing, it was important to kind of have a big lay of the land, make sure everybody agreed with the layout of the park. So what you would be asked to vote for in A would really just be accepting the notion of this as the framework, the concept plan. None of these details are set in stone. As we move into the next part of the presentation, which is phase one is what we would be talking about voting on a contract to actually design and build this year. Phase one, conceptually, is grading, utilities, and some sidewalks. All these other elements that you see, the rebuilding the main amphitheater building, installing a fire pit, installing a bubbler, kind of water play area. None of those would be built in phase one. Those are future phases. Right now, we only have a funding source for phase one. Phase one has to happen first. It's the grading and the utilities. So the future phases ultimately would have to come back through a board process. There'd have to be funding sources available or identified. And then at the time you found funding and decided to do phase two, you would have a consultant, whether it would be TRIA or someone else, would be starting to design those plans, coming back through the ad hoc committee, back through the board committee to actually talk about the details. And at that point, you can make changes. You can decide, if we want to do this, the stage next, or we want to hold off on the stage. We'd like to work on, we want the second phase to involve the concession building. And, so those phases really are kind of up in the air. They're yet to be decided. We're not looking for any approval tonight of what's phase 2, 3, 4, what order they're in, exactly what type of structures we're building. Those would all be future phases. So you'll have plenty of opportunity in the future to decide collectively. Presumably, it would go through the ad hoc committee first to kind of come up with a proposal that would offer the details, and that's when they could flush out the different options. Do we want a gas fire pit? Do we want it to be wood burning? Those kinds of things could be altered and decided later. You could, in fact, decide certain elements later. You just don't really want to do that piece, and maybe we just proceed without that later. But those are all decisions that can be made in the future.
Trustee Mills, you still have a question?
Okay, yeah, so just to reiterate what you're saying, that this is, we are approving the plan in concept only. Anything can be different in it as we go along, but these are the basics.
Right.
Utility type improvements we
What's
need to
important
do.
would be like the location of the concession building and the bathroom are going to be here.
Yeah, 'cause once you put in
in phase
utilities,
one, they're going to
yeah.
run utilities, stub them, so they're available to do that work later.
But, and this is just a thing here that, say next year we decide, well, we can't afford to redo the concession stand. So it could still stand as is, but in the future, if we wanted to do it, it's there.
Right. And
Okay.
basically, the master plan is a roadmap, if you look at it that way. It's where you ultimately want to end up, whether that be 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road. It gives you, I think I started to say is, you want to have a master plan, you want to have that roadmap, so when we do phase one, and I'll show you that in a minute, and we start moving earth and we start grading, that when you do phase two, we don't say, okay, well, everything we did in phase one, now we have to redo, because we didn't know what we were doing, we were just winging it. So that roadmap allows us to hone in on each phase and make sure that we're not undoing something, or we're not doing something that's going to cause us trouble, or that we're including things like I alluded to, the sound system for when we do the amphitheater. We're not doing that sound system now. But like I said, the idea is that we will eventually have some sort of sound system and lighting system on the viewing hill that'll be part of the amphitheater construction. So what we're proposing right now is that we are going to estimate where those things might be, and we're going to run pipe from the sidewalk at the front, where it butts up to the back of the amphitheater, up to about where we think they are, so that when we do get to that phase, we're not tearing the whole viewing hill apart again. We're just making small modifications to it in order to put those systems in.
Okay.
So
and-
those are the kinds of things that the master plan allows us to
Right.
do, is to know where we're going next, or where we're going down the road, so that we can make smart decisions for each phase as we go.
Okay, and I may be jumping ahead of you here with the phase one, but you're going to actually, now the main hill is going to pretty much stay at the same height? The main viewing hill, or is that going to be
It's going to get
brought
bigger.
down?
It's going to get wider. I believe it's going to get a little bit taller. It's going to basically be reconfigured so it allows you to have more people.
So
and
people
we're
will
gonna-
be able to get up and down it, okay then? Okay, and then you're going to level out that other area?
Right.
Okay,
Yeah, we're taking earth from the one side,
Yeah.
and we're going to add it to the viewing hill, and the goal is to use the earth that you have there. We may have to bring in some, but we're going to grade it all out. But the goal is to use everything that you have there as much as we can.
okay, thank you.
In wintertime, are we going to be able to use a toboggan down that hill? It sounds that's the way it's going to be.
I don't know if it'll be quite that steep, but you might be able to.
Okay.
Sure, you could. Well, how much fun it would be, I'm not sure.
Trustee Gata, you had a question before Trustee Palafis.
Yeah, the thing is that, one, I think the plan is excellent. There's no question about it. And yes, as far as Phase 1, we will be getting into all the other things in Phase 2 and Phase 3 and so forth, yes. But as far as the master plan, and this is the one that we had looked at and approved also, are you going to go over Phase 1?
Yes.
Okay, then I won't go into asking questions.
The next thing on the list is
Okay,
to hit Phase 1.
that's all I have, then. He's going to talk about Phase 1.
Trustee Palafis, you had a question first.
Yes, sir. Actually, it's more of a comment. You know, when we chartered out to put this together and find the right partner to help us, it was always with the intention to have a phase plan. So if we never got past Phase 1 or Phase 2, or for whatever reason, we still accomplished the overall goal in terms of what we know after 30 years of doing events there, almost 30 years, that we need. And, you know, it was with a multifunctional purpose in mind, because you have a lot going on out there. You have 4th of July, you have Plot's concert, you have the summer concert series, and they all use different parts of that site, you know, as you all know, because you help volunteer for so many of those events. And then the Brew Garden guys really weighed in, you know, onto things that, because the sites become so popular that, you know, we actually hit or exceed the theoretical maximums, you know, in some of those events, or the bigger concerts, or, you know, the German Fest. It's just, you know, so some of these Phase 1 things, which I think, you know, you'll hear in a second, you know, we're kind of with the understanding of this is just kind of the basic blocking and tackling that we needed to have success for the current events that we have today. You know what I mean? So I just wanted to give you some color in the background to let you know from the ad hoc committee perspective what the initial goals and requirements were.
Thank you.
Circling back to your question about the ice arena, I just got a text from JSD. She said that it's a 15-year lifespan,
All right, thank you.
and that's not part of Phase 1, so.
No, it's not.
So I think in your packets, you should have the cost estimate for the master plan. This is the master plan as a whole, based on 2020 dollars. I won't bore you with trying to explain every detail of it, but we are in the $5.5 million range for the project as a whole, and that's construction costs, not AE fees. It's just, that doesn't include soft costs, that's just construction costs itself. But again, multi-phases, and it can be broken down into, obviously, we're more than one phase, but 2 phases, 3 phases, 4 phases, 5 phases. I mean, you can break it down as much as you want. Certain phases are not going to, like the amphitheater itself is not going to be able to be broken apart. The stage, the building, the infrastructure, the sound. Well, sound system we could break out a little bit separately, but the infrastructure for the sound will have to be there, the tiered seating. That piece will have to go as a whole. But most of the other pieces of the park that we can break down as big or as small as in chunks as you want. The 2 ways that we can work with you as we go forward in breaking into phases is we can do it by chunks, or we could do it by dollars. If you said we can devote $1 million a year or $500,000 a year, we can look at how we can break up those chunks into those dollar amounts. If you say we want to do the amphitheater, then we want to do concession, then we want to do beer garden, we can break it up that way. So it really comes down to what is best for the village financially and how you want to break it up.
Okay, thank you.
Do we want to go on to Phase 1? Okay. All right, so Phase 1. So this is what the park will look like at the end of Phase 1. So the gray areas are the areas that we're doing work. So this is your current amphitheater with its side walls and the way the tiered seating goes around. In the amphitheater seating, your existing concession building, your existing beer garden, the green space around it. So what we're looking at for Phase 1 is really the regrading of the viewing hill and the village green space to the side of it, the entrance way, the spine sidewalk with the gate, or the gateway in the entrance, and then the spine sidewalk that comes up, the gathering node minus the 3D structure, so it would just be the concrete work that would come into there, the vendor circle, the vendor court on this side, and then the walkways that lead out over to the west. So a majority of our money is spent, obviously, in moving a great deal of earth here and in the concrete. It's also spent on running some of the utilities. Like I said, we're going to run pipe up from here up the hill for probably, my guess is somewhere right around here. And here we'll have 2 spots for future sound systems. We're also going to be reworking, when we're redoing the grading, we're going to have to rework the site lighting on the park, and we're adding the walkway, so we'll want to work on with lighting there. And we'll also be running some utilities for different things. Plus, we have to look at what we have to do to meet MWRD stormwater requirements. We know we have the detention taken care of, but we have runoff requirements and things like that we have to work with. So it gives you basically the stage and amphitheater you have currently with a great deal more capacity for people, as well as then gives you the flat green space that can be more easily used for a multitude of uses. And we're creating some more, not all of, because if you remember from the master plan, there's all this concrete that comes in, the additional plaza space, but we are creating the gathering node, the gathering node here, which will increase the amount of seating and space for people to be able to enjoy concerts as well as concessions. And that was one of the things that we talked about with the gentleman around the concessions, is that people don't like to come from the top of the hill and walk down. They want to get their concessions and they want to stay close by. So it creates the gathering node. Not only does it give it a node for circulation paths to intersect each other and people to gather, it also gives us spaces where people could sit, depending on how the budget shakes out in the end, how much of the site furnishings we're able to include in here, but places where people could sit either at high top tables or picnic tables or chairs and sit here to be able to enjoy concessions and still be able to enjoy concerts and events in the amphitheater. So phase 1, knowing that the budget was $1 million, that's how we basically, as I said before, we talked about, I could break up it by dollars, or I could break it up by chunks. We really looked at it and said, okay, if we have $1 million, how can we spend it in the most logical way? And this is the work that fit into that initial budget. So we're right now estimating that to be about $982,000. And we do have contingencies into that. So if you're thinking that seems like it's awful close to the budget, there are contingencies, safeguards built into that number already, as well as the fact that we know that we can make adjustments to some of these things as we go without compromising the overall phase 1 project scope of work.
Peter, I got a question for you, since we're talking money now. What we'd be approving tonight is the contract for the design, which leads up to, what, $172,500?
Right.
And then after that, we're technically on B, we're approving the cost plan of $982,318?
Right, so the design would be done in order to go out to bid for a contractor. We would get bids back from the contractor to do the construction. That's where you get to the $900,000 plus. So that would come back to the board before you would award a bid for construction with actual prices. The numbers you're looking at here are just based on these rough estimates at this point.
So I guess the question I've got for you is, how much do we have available at this point?
The Prairie Stone Capital Fund has over $1 million plus additional money for the design services available. So there is some cushion in there. Some things, and I don't have the full capital improvement budget in front of me. This is a fund that, as you may remember, is some remnants of the old EDA that was used for various projects throughout the western area. So that there's more money than what this project is actually calling for. There's some money that is tentatively allocated for other projects in that fund. So if it's, give or take a little bit here or there, there's a cushion. So unless the bids come back and they're wildly out of whack with this, there should be sufficient funds in that account.
Let's hope.
And if that's the case, then, as Ron said, we'd have to do an exercise of going back. Obviously, if you still wanted to proceed, what could maybe be done different? What could we cut out of this plan to, do a project that fits with the money that's available?
I guess the other question I have for you is, where are we going to come up with $5 million eventually?
Yeah, and I don't have that answer, obviously, especially given the turn of events that have happened. I mean, that's really part of why this is a long-term plan, and part of why this Phase 1 was so critical to get designed in a way that, as Trustee Palafis said, if you built Phase 1 only and had to stop for some period of time, several years, this is still a huge movement forward. It still addresses issues that have been talked about and desired by the board for years, and we've been struggling with figuring out how to do that, but we are always cautious about not starting to build something without the big picture plan. So what this process gives you is that big plan. Now you can have confidence that your Phase 1 step, which addresses some of the most pressing concerns, can be done in a context that will work. As soon as it's done and the grass is restored, you can start using it and it'll be better. And then you also have it fitting into a future plan that can be built. There are opportunities, and the village has not explored significantly some of the grants that might be available, things that the Park District has tapped into for some park facility improvements. They've been very successful. Just because of the nature of what we do, typically we don't have park-like space. This is kind of an unusual asset for the village. So there may be other grant funding opportunities out there that, down the road or that we could look at. You just don't know. I mean, obviously the financial world looks very bleak as we stand here today, but you could have said that 5 years ago too, and yet things, can turn, so.
So another question I have is with going through the Phase 1 construction plan, is that going to allow the grass that now is so waterlogged after heavy rains to be drained better?
Yes, I think that's a huge part of this plan. The original construction of the park never anticipated the kind of usage that it's gotten and the success of some of the events out there. I mean, it was really nobody could have foresaw the nature and the scale of some of the events, or nor the success of some of those events. So where it's really, some areas have been really maxed out from a usage standpoint. So the old park is just kind of designed with some general drainage. This will be designed much more purposefully with the intent of making sure there's proper drainage so that the land can drain quickly and be used quickly. So I think this will be a whole different experience when it's done.
Do we have an idea as to where this water would be drained to?
Well, it all drains to the north, obviously down the hill, and it, it's going to go into the wetlands, and that's part of what the engineers will be doing in the 172,000. Part of that design plan is to actually do the technical drainage and then routing it through the MWRD approval process to make sure that it's up to their standards from a water quality standpoint. So when we come back with the actual going out to bid with this project and awarding prior to construction, we'll have all those technical details of exactly kind of the nuances of where the drainage will go.
And speaking about MWRD, how long a process would you think that would take?
Right now, we're estimating about a 2-month process. We've built, because of we're kind of a fast-track nature of this schedule in order to be able to get done so you'd be able to use it next summer again. We're going to be applying for MWRD right about the same time that we're going out to bid, but we are planning to have pre-designed meetings with them in order to start the ball rolling, get them on our side early on, work out some of those bugs with them as early on, and that usually proves to be a very worthwhile experience with them, because if you get them to buy into it early, to tell us what their concerns are early, we can work through a lot of those bugs and get those things worked out before we do the engineering or while we're doing engineering. So when it does come to a submittal process, it goes a lot smoother. And the way the schedule is set up, we have a gap between a 2-month gap between when it goes out to bid and when we actually have construction scheduled to start. We didn't schedule construction to start immediately after it's awarded. We gave it a little more time in order to allow for those permit processes to go through. And if they go through faster, then we can start sooner.
Sure.
But we've sort of left a window for that. Now, obviously, there's always the caveat that if something goes drastically wrong and some things could go haywire, but we're not anticipating that. It's not, because detention is already accounted for within the pond itself, we really are working with water quality, runoff control, things like that, some of the smaller pieces, which can be complicated in and of themselves, but we're not looking at, since we don't have to provide large amount of detention on somewhere for the water since it's already accounted for, it does alleviate some of those concerns.
Thank you. Anyone else with questions? Trustee Palafis, you have one.
I just wanted to address the funding question from the ad hoc committee's perspective. Two things, really. One was the phases, kind of gently going into this, without being aggressive and, taking it slow. And with the understanding, number two, that it wasn't going to be a scalp of the general fund. We have the revenue engine out there now with the Brew Garden. So for example, they made $20,000 this weekend, phase 3 of COVID. So there's a money stream that allowed us to have a different conversation. So the intention was that it would somewhat be self-funding, in the goals of going through the phases. But now everything's different. We have to see what happens. But that was the answer in March, when we started out on the financial discussions of phase 1. It was just like Peter had said, it was kind of the stuff we've always wanted to do. And really, if I had to characterize phase 1, it's really the maximization or optimization of the current space we have, because we didn't know what we know now 30 years ago, with all the big events that we're having out there that are so successful. So just another comment.
Thank you.
If I might, to go along with what he said, is that alone may drive how you want to approach future phases. Where when we're talking about a Village Green and amphitheater site, your first, from a designer standpoint, my first knee-jerk reaction is phase 2 should be the amphitheater. But when you're talking about funding sources, phase 2 may want to be concession stand, phase 3 may be beer garden, because increasing their capability to make money increases the site's ability to make money, therefore increases revenue, and may then help offset costs of the later phases. And those are things that are above my pay grade to tell you guys how to do. But just as a way to think about phasing, there's a lot of different ways that we can think about it and work with it, and we want to work with you in terms of what makes the most sense for you particularly.
Thank you. Anyone else with any other questions at all? Otherwise, I guess we do have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. And that leads us to the Planning Division Monthly Report. This is for information only. Anybody have any questions on that? That'll be received and filed. Second is the Code Enforcement Division Monthly Report. Anybody with any questions on that? That'll be received and filed. And third is the Economic Development and Tourism Monthly Report. Anybody have any questions there? And that'll be received and filed. President's Report.
I'll wait for the board meeting, Chairman Stanton.
Thank you. We have nothing in other or items in review, so I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'd like to go ahead and call the General Administration and Personnel Committee for the Village of Hoffman Estates on this Monday, June 8th, 2020. May I have a roll call, please?
Chairman Arnett.
Present.
Vice Chairman Mills.
Present.
Trustee Stanton.
Present.
Trustee Newell.
Present.
Trustee Palafis.
Present.
Trustee Gata.
Present.
Mayor McLeod.
Present.
Thank you. We do have a quorum. If I can have approval of minutes for May 11th, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Anybody have any corrections, additions? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Also need approval for minutes for May 18th, 2020. So moved.
Second.
Do you have any corrections? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. We have two new items under new business. Number one is the discussion regarding legislative update. Staff have anything to add?
Good evening. It's been a busy time, actually, for the Illinois General Assembly lately. They actually did meet for the first time since March at the end of May, and their priority was to pass the state budget. The state budget year begins July 1st, so they did do that successfully. The governor is expected to sign that. The budget for 21 does include a number of municipal priorities, so we're pleased that the LGDF pass-through is going to not be reduced for the first time in a number of years. There were 5% cuts to LGDF for the last 2 years, and so that's been restored to its full funding level, which is wonderful. Of course, it is income tax money, so with unemployment being the way that it is with COVID, some of those gains may be offset a little bit there. Our pass-through revenues also are going to be funded at 100%, so that includes MFT and our gaming revenues, so that's all good news for us. One thing I wanted to mention is through the budget process, there's been a discussion about how CARES Act funding, federal funding for the CARES Act for coronavirus will be distributed to municipalities within Illinois. Because we are located in Cook County, we're not going to get the per capita distribution that's specified in the state budget, and so Cook County is going to have to work through that and determine how those monies will eventually flow through to the village and other municipalities within the county. Other than that, we're just monitoring all of the executive orders that are coming out from the governor's office, and we'll pass that information along as it becomes available.
Trustee Odette?
Mayor McLeod?
Yeah, I was on a call with County Board President Preckwinkle last week. We have a weekly call with the president also, and what you said was they will distribute some money to municipalities, the CARE money, but it'll be based on need, and they didn't define what the need was. I think we'll find that we don't need any. I think it could be their decision. And maybe I'm just skeptical. But, so we'll see what comes out of it.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else
Hopefully
have
we'll get
any
some.
questions or anything? Thank you, Susanna. Okay, number 2 is request approval of a resolution amending the village's personnel policy manual, sexual harassment.
So moved.
Second.
Anybody have any questions? Trustee Stanton?
I have a question regarding the last whereas. That's the 5th whereas in the resolution, where it reads, whereas should any section or provision of this resolution or the adopted policy prohibiting sexual harassment be declared to be invalid, that decision shall not affect the validity of this resolution or adopted policy prohibiting sexual harassment as a whole or any part thereof other than the part so declared to be invalid. To me, that's taking away the ability of the court to decide whether or not the harassment statute here or ordinance is constitutional or not. And I don't think we have that ability to do that. That's why I would be asking that last whereas be pulled from the resolution.
I'll make a motion to strike the last whereas.
Does legal corporate have anything?
No, it won't affect the validity of what's being enacted.
You never have too many whereases.
I will second the motion of Trustee Palafis.
Yeah, Trustee Palafis made the motion.
You made the motion, I seconded it.
Did you have anything that you wanted to add for that, Patrick?
I really don't. Just the materials are enclosed. It is something we're proposing to be amended within our sexual harassment policy. A resolution is before you along with the proposed edited changes within the attachment of the sexual harassment policy.
Thank you. So we need a motion to,
Karen, Trustee Palafis has a question.
yes, Trustee Palafis.
I'm sorry, I didn't know
I
if you
was
saw me
focusing.
all the way over here. Patrick, it seems to me that the emphasis of this is just to align to the state statute.
That's exactly what it is.
Okay.
It's following up on a General Assembly which enacted a change, an amendment in the State Officials of Employment Ethics Act, which would be requiring, as it reads here, requiring each governmental unit to adopt a resolution to provide for a mechanism for reporting an independent review of allegations of sexual harassment made against an elected official of a governmental unit by another elected official of a governmental unit.
So it's cross-governmental units, like Park District and Library District, or different types?
Well, even within your own group.
I think it's within your own
Oh, it is. See,
governmental
that's where
unit.
the language lost me a little bit because it said, okay, never mind.
Yeah.
I get it.
Anybody else? So we do have a motion to amend, and we have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Now, do we have to make another motion? Do we have to make another motion to approve the,
So yeah, my motion was a motion to amend. I'll make a motion to approve the proposed recommendation by staff for the village personnel's policy.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. We move on to the reports for information only. Number 1 is the Cable TV Monthly Report. We'll go ahead and receive and file that. Number 2 is the Human Resources Management Monthly Report. Receive and file that one. Number 3 is the Legislative Operations and Outreach Monthly Report. Anything to add, Susanna? We'll go ahead and receive and file that one. President's Report, Mr. Mayor?
Oh, wait for the board meeting chairperson.
Thank you. I see nothing in other or items in review. Can I have a motion for an adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Adjourned.
I would like to call to order the Transportation and Road Improvement Committee meeting for June 8th, 2020. The secretary, please call the roll.
Chairman Mills.
Here.
Vice Chairman Stanton.
Present.
Trustee Arnett.
Present.
Trustee Noel.
Present.
Trustee Palafis.
Present.
Trustee Gata.
Present.
Mayor McLeod.
Present.
Thank you. Look for a motion to approve the minutes of May 11th, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any changes or corrections? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. This evening, under new business, we have one item. Request approval of A, Third Amendment to the Intergovernmental Agreement with Cook County for Shoe Factory Road improvements in an amount of $266,214.40. And B, Third Supplement to the Village Phase 2 Design Services Contract with Civil Tech Incorporated in the amount of $203,888.60 for a total not to exceed amount of Phase 2 design services of $1,166,795.80.
So moved.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Staff want to address this at all?
Sure, thank you. This is Mike Hankey.
Thank you, Mike. Didn't know you were there.
Yep. I can just provide a brief overview. These two items are both related to the longstanding joint project that we're doing with Cook County for improvements to Shoe Factory Road and Beverly Road, which in summary are rebuilding both of those roads, widening to meet future capacity requirements, flattening the curve along Shoe Factory Road at Rorson, installation of lighting and sidewalk and bike path. So what's before you, the two items relate to supplemental work, additional work that's required to finalize the design plans that date back to over 10 years ago when the preliminary plans were approved. Since that time, a number of regulations have changed, and various portions of the project plans needed to be updated. There's additional environmental testing, drainage revisions due to MWRD requirements, which generated changes to the quantity and the plans and specifications. So it's trying to capture all those items that would be required to bring the plans to a final state where we approved by Cook County. So the two items that are requested are the first is a third amendment to the intergovernmental agreement with Cook County that the village first entered into a number of years ago and last amended in 2018. So this format follows the same layout as the prior amendments and specifies the scope of work to be handled under this contract amendment. So the Civil Tech supplement is also the third to that agreement, and that incorporates all the enumerated changes to the plans that I talked about before. All these costs, the village share of this supplement is about $100,000. This is eligible for payment through the Western Corridor Fund, which was the money for that fund came from developer agreements put into place with the original approval of the University Place and then subsequently the Laufenberger properties. So there are adequate funds available to cover the village share. Likewise, the county has indicated that they are able to program their share of the design costs through MFT, county MFT dollars, and these were received recommendation for approval tonight and were subsequently approved by the board. They would go to the county board for consideration in July.
Thank
So
you,
with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hanky. Any questions for Mr. Hanky? Trustee Stanton?
Mike, over the years, how much would you say the design costs have grown from the initial estimate?
He can't count that high.
Let's see. So I would say, I don't have the detailed breakdown, but it's probably on the order of $300,000.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else? And
No.
yes, Trustee Palafis.
I just remember more than 10 years ago out here having Dennis and Wayne and all the discussions about, it's been a decade. It's hard to believe.
A long time.
Yeah, it has.
Longer than that.
So glad it's finally here, Mike.
Well, we're not there
Yes,
yet.
agreed.
Almost here, yeah.
Yeah. Anyone else? Okay, seeing no other questions, we do have a motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Reports for informational. Thanks, Michael. Reports for information only. A, Transportation Division Monthly Report. Anything else to highlight on that? Seeing none. Any questions?
Not tonight.
Yes, go ahead, Michael.
No, just if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Anything for Mr. Hanky? No. Okay, seeing none, we will mark that as filed and reviewed and filed. President's report.
Wait for the board meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there anything else to come before this committee this evening? Seeing none, and we have no items in review, I look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the ayes have it. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Call the special meeting of June 8th to order. Can you call the roll, Madam Clerk?
Trustee Mills?
Present.
Trustee Newell? Present. Trustee Palafis?
Present.
Trustee Stanton?
Present.
Trustee Gata?
Present.
Trustee Arnett?
Present.
Mayor McLeod?
Present. Can everybody please rise? Trustee Mills, you want to lead us in the pledge? Thank you, Trustee Mills.
You're welcome.
Just have a couple of items we have to deal with here. We had quite a parade going by Johanna and Mike Gata's house on Saturday, celebrating their 60th wedding anniversary. There must have been 80 cars.
Well, I had heard over 60, but I don't know. I haven't had a
I was at the
final-
end of the line, so it seemed like 80 to me. But Joni and I enjoyed that. It was great. 60 years. So I do have a little bit of official business here today. Village of Hoffman Estates Office of the Mayor Proclamation. Whereas Johanna Gata and Michael Gata were both born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio, this beautiful couple was married on Saturday, June 4th, 1960. Whereas Michael and Johanna have 4 amazing children, Michael, Mark, Michelle, and Matthew. They enjoy spending time with their children, 6 grandchildren, and 4 great-grandchildren. Whereas Michael and Johanna are both accomplished business owners, Michael worked in the food industry for many years, and in the past 20 years, he and Johanna have owned Seattle Sun Healthy Food Distributors. In addition, Johanna was a successful realtor for over 30 years, owning her own real estate office. And whereas Michael, a veteran of the United States Army, is an expert pilot, he is also passionate about his work with the Civil Air Patrol, helping search and rescue downed planes and missing persons. His children fondly remember going flying with him every weekend. Johanna, devoted to her family, raised their children at home until they reached high school. And whereas Michael is currently in his second term as a village trustee, a position he is very passionate about. Both Michael and Johanna are active members of their community in Haverford and have served as HOA director and social director respectively. Be it therefore resolved that I, William D. McLeod, acting under and by virtue of the authority vested in me by the Constitution of the State of Illinois, the laws of the Village of Hoffman states, I proclaim Thursday, June 4th, 2020 as Johanna and Michael Gata Day in the Village of Hoffman Estates. And 60 more years, please. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank all of you. That's a real surprise. That's a real surprise.
Michael,
Ah,
your daughter Michelle came through.
oh, that's for sure. Thank you. And all of you that participated, right, that heard about it for it. And you know what? Oh, talking on the microphone? What is amazing is that when you watch on television, you know, people that have the celebration for the drive-by and so forth, that's one thing. But when they do it for yourself, it's unbelievable. Johanna had tears in her eyes, and I had goosebumps, right? Because it was car after car, and with the police cars and the fire engines and so forth. You know, we can't say enough when we say thank you, thank you, thank you to all of you, right? And I've enjoyed being here without a doubt. And this is a real surprise.
Well, we enjoy having you with us. It's good to have the whole gang back together again.
Yes, no
long
question about that. Thank you all.
You have 4 M&Ms.
Yeah.
That is correct.
I didn't think about that for a second.
And the thing is that, and because there's, well, of course, myself, my son Michael, his son, my grandson is Michael, and my great-grandson is Michael. So now that there's 4 generations of Michael Gatas, right? So they're going to stick around for a while, I
Right.
guess.
Well, that's great. Congratulations to Johanna and Michael.
Yes, and thank you again.
You're very welcome. I do have the board and commission renewals. I think everybody got a memo on this. Some people are being taken off for either having quit or not attending meetings. I'm adding Trustee Gary Palafis as a member and chair of the Economic Development Commission. So the chair would accept a motion.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, you want to call the roll, Madam Clerk?
Trustee Mills?
Aye.
Trustee Newell?
Aye.
Trustee Palafis?
Aye.
Trustee Stanton?
Aye.
Trustee Gata?
Aye.
Trustee Arnett?
Aye.
Mayor McLeod?
Aye, motion carried. A couple of things I also wanted to mention. One, there's a lady up on the north side who makes a lot of the masks, and she puts them on her tree in front of her house so people can come up and get them. It's really, really cool. Then another set of great citizens is our village clerk, Bev Romanoff, and her son Adam, who, on the hottest day we'd had to date, mowed the lawn for a neighbor who they were forced to move out of their house, and the realtor wouldn't mow the lawn. I called them, and they just wouldn't do it, so Bev and Adam went over there, and they just did it. It was really long.
Then 2 days later, did you see somebody had their lawn service go over there and cut up the mulch that I left, but they didn't trim either, so I was like, I was not happy. Adam
No,
said,
no
what the
kidding.
what?
I think the closing was supposed to be today if it went through. Yeah, so hopefully. Yeah, hopefully it all worked out, because nobody heard from June or Ray. We've had our usual array of meetings, our internal EOC meetings. We had Northwest Municipal Conference briefing with Tony Preckwinkle last Tuesday. We'll have have another one tomorrow. And Bev and I had a liquor license interview with Patty Cross for Honeyberry Cafe. It's out west by the owners of Burnt Pizza. And on Wednesday the 3rd, we had the national COVID call with the White House. And on Friday, we again had our internal meeting, and I participated and listened on Zoom on a climate adaptation webinar, and another climate risk and vulnerability. And then we had our all mayors call for the U.S. Conference of Mayors after that. And then we had the National League of Cities Transportation and Infrastructure Committee meeting, obviously telephonically. And today we had the briefing with President Preckwinkle again. It changes from Mondays to Tuesdays and various other days. And I think that's all I have, so the chair would take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a motion, a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carried. We are adjourned.